They whispered about humans on Neuralis the way children whispered about river ghosts. Soft, quick, guilty. The locals called them fireborn, ancestors of storms, monsters from old wars who walked out of burning moons and then vanished like breath on cold glass. Most thought the stories were a way to make sense of ruins left by empires that no longer had names, a myth to keep reckless hands away from forbidden wrecks. Mason Hale did not argue with myths. He kept his hands grease-black and busy and let the city of Eryxis forget he was one of the creatures from its bedtime tailies. At dawn, the sky over Eryxis wore a pale green ribbon, the aurora that lived on the world's day-night border. Neuralis was tidally locked, one face always to its sun, one always in shadow. The city clung to the twilight strip between, a long crescent of metal and stone that hummed with life. Towers of singing glass caught the aurora and turned it into music. Magsleds floated down avenues lined with glowmoss. Market tents of dyed kelp flapped in a breeze that smelled of tin and salt. People of a dozen species bartered with color ink marks on their cheeks, quick strokes that meant trust or price or warning. Mason's shop looked like a wound in the driftwood brown wall of Dock 8. A single slate sign read, Hail Repair, Water PUMPS, Guidance RINGS, Old Things. He woke the lights, boiled tea, and rolled up the bay door. His left hand trembled once, the old injury he could never fix. He clasped the wrist with his right and squeezed until it stilled, then set out his tools. Sierra arrived before the morning bell. She was showry, tall, and willow-thin, skin like polished obsidian, 4 slender arms ending in delicate hands. A crown of opal filaments curved over her brow, catching the aurora and reflecting it in soft sparks. Her species greeted by scent, one palm pressed to a small vent beneath the jaw, so Mason kept a sachet of citrus oil near the counter. He dabbed a little on his wrist and offered it. She smiled at the human custom he had built for her, and for no one else, then breathed it in. Bad news, Hale, she said, voice musical, each word a note. The prefect has ordered the market closed by nightfall, surveyors, inspections, a purge. Of smugglers? Mason asked. Of history? She reached into her satchel and set a bundle on the counter. Wrapped cloth unraveled to reveal a metallic shard the color of star-faded bone. Mason forgot to breathe. The shard was not Dominion, not local, too clean, too old. He knew the texture like the back of his own hand. Human hull plating, composite weave under a ceramic skin, markings like tiny teeth along the edge where a laser cutter had bitten it free. Where? He asked. The dry sea, Sierra said. Storm uncovered a spine of something. Traders went to pry it loose. Prefect Malek's drones arrived first. They sealed the site and announced a heritage violation. She rolled her eyes at the Dominion phrase. I grabbed this before they saw me. You shouldn't have, Mason said. He meant thank you. Sierra's people were archivists. They collected memory threads, thin glass fibers that stored scent and vibration. They could sing a year into a coil and wrap it in cloth, then hand it to a child who would press the coil to their forehead and smell the past. She taught Mason to listen to threads with his tools. In return, he taught her to mend machines. It made the two of them odd in Eryxis, the archivist who liked rust and the human who loved songs. Sierra tapped the shard. This belongs to your myths. Don't start, Mason said, but his hand was steady now. He carried the shard to the back table and set it beneath a microscope lamp. Lettering gleamed where sand had polished it smooth. UECTRN, then a number he knew. United Earth Coalition, Transport Registry. He closed his eyes and saw a memory he could not control. A boy hunched in a cargo hold with headphones on, listening to an old ship's engine sing a low, patient note that meant home. He swallowed hard and set the shard on a sensor bed. A soft cursor flickered. The composite still held trace signals imprinted by a million cycles of vibration. Not a voice, not words, a pattern. He boosted the gain and cleaned the static. The shop filled with a heartbeat. Slow, grand, steady. It was the kind of sound that lived in bones. Sierra pressed her hand to her jaw. What is that? Guidance ring hum, Mason said. From a transport class we used 200 years ago. Sierra asked softly. Mason turned off the playback. Humans, when I was a kid, my mother made me listen to old recordings, said I'd know my people by the way we tuned our engines. He forced a smile. I told her that was stupid, now it is. Sierra's gaze softened. She never pried into his past. She knew he had served in a war and walked away and ended up in Eryxis with scars and a jaw that clenched whenever someone in a gray Dominion uniform walked by. Why a purge, he asked. Malek hates trouble, why stir the city? Because of last week, Sierra lowered her voice. A flare in low orbit, a pulse from the old watchnet. The sky towers say it was nothing, a ghost in the net, but the Temple of Threads says it was a call. Mason frowned. What kind of call? An awakening, she said. Archivists felt it in their fibers. The old songs vibrated on the racks, as if something large brushed the city with its shadow. Mason put the shard in a lead-lined box and clicked it shut. Then we ought to be quiet. They were not given the chance. By midday, Prefect Vormalik's drones swept the market with glass wings hissing. Inspectors in gray pulled up tarps and scan crates. They smeared black ink on the cheeks of merchants whose papers were not perfect. Black meant fines. 2 blacks meant seizure. 3 meant prison. Malik liked rules because rules turned fear into a system. A squad stopped at Mason's shop. The lead inspector, a pale Keth in Dominion livery, peered over the counter. "Human," it said, thin lips wrinkling on the word. "You will submit your inventory for heritage scan." "I fix pumps and guidance rings," Mason said. "None older than you." The Keth's mouth twitched. Humor is a known trait, so is theft. Sierra stepped between them with her archivist's calm. "We will comply," she said, "and we will file a grievance with the temple. Archives fall under temple law." "Temple law bows to Dominion decree," the Keth said, but it did not push past her. Sierra wore the opal crown. Archivists carried power in Erixis. Even Malik burned a stick of incense at the Thread Temple once a year because superstition was cheaper than riots. They scanned shelves, poked at rusted bins, lifted the corner of the mat that hid Mason's floor safe. He made tea he did not drink and stood like a wall. When the inspectors finally left, Sierra let out the breath she had been holding and touched his arm with 2 fingertips, a Shaori sign for steady. When the aurora deepened to bruised purple, sirens shook the air. Everyone in Dock 8 went still. Sirens meant storm, breach, or reactor leak or war. The sky changed. The gentle green ribbon turned black at its center as if someone had sliced through the light and laid a road across the heavens. Mag sleds hissed to a halt. The singing glass towers went silent. Mason felt the hair on his arms rise. Static prickled his tongue. Sierra stepped into the street. "Hail." He grabbed her wrist. "Inside." They stood in the shop doorway and stared up with the rest of the city. The black road widened. Stars behind it warped like coins seen through water. A line of shadows slid out of nothing and became ships. They were not Dominion. They were long, knife-sleek, matte as night. Their edges ate starlight. They did not burn when they moved. They simply were in one place and then another place, and the air between chose to pretend it had watched them travel. A ring of pale fire spun at the tail of each one, a whispering aurora in miniature. The singing glass towers started to scream. Not music. Alarm. The watchnet woke late and terrified. Batteries on the cliffs unfolded like blooming iron and spat white lines into the dark. The lines curved and died before they reached the ships, as if the sky itself turned the bolts aside. Sierra's opal crown dimmed. She reached for Mason's hand. "What are they?" Mason knew before his mouth moved. He knew by the way the ships cut the night, by the deep, patient hum he felt more than heard. "Homed," he whispered. The first defense ring around Erixis went dark. Then the second. The towers along the sea shut down one by one, synchronized by an invisible hand. The ships did not fire. They drifted in a slow wall that made the city feel small. Prefect Malik's voice came on every public speaker, clipped and angry. "Citizens of Erixis, return to shelters. This is a scheduled net exercise." A low laugh, human and amused, rolled over his broadcast and erased it. The laugh did not come from a speaker or the sky. It came from the ground at Mason's feet, from the little box under his work table, from every dust-clogged wire he had ever patched. The old net had woken. Something had taken the city's nerves in its hands and played them like a harp. The laugh stopped. A voice spoke in trade common, male, calm, old. "Erixis," it said, "anchor city of Neurales, we remember your fires, we remember your dead. You are under our protective claim until further notice. Do not resist." Someone in the street cried out, "Who are you?" as if sound could travel to the ships like a thrown stone. Sierra's fingers dug into Mason's palm. "Is it your people?" "Not mine," Mason said, "but yes, human or close enough." He did not say Ghost Fleet. He did not dare. A battery on the ridge tried one last desperate shot. The match ships did not answer. A drone rose from the lead vessel and drifted downward like a falling seed. It reached the ridge, flared once, and the entire battery went quiet and cold. Crowds surged. Some ran for the Thread Temple, some ran for the sea tunnels. Some lifted their children and held them up to watch a legend arrive. The city was wide awake and terrified, and Mason could feel the air choosing sides. Sierra looked at him. "What do we do?" "Stay small," he said. "Stay indoors. They're not bombing. They're cutting tendons. They want control, not blood." "How do you know?" she asked. "Because it's what I would do," he said, and hated that it was true. He pulled the door down and killed his lights. The shop became a dim cave. The only glow came from the seam around the safe where the shard waited in its lead skin like a captured spark. The city outside was a river of footsteps. Far overhead, one of the ships angled, and for a heartbeat its forward plating caught the last light of the aurora and gleamed with a faint insignia, a ring of 12 small circles around a single long blade. Mason sat on the floor with his back to the counter and counted breaths until his chest eased. Sierra sat beside him, knees drawn up, all 4 hands folded, a Shaolri posture for fear held tight. "You were in a war," she said. "You left it, you came here, why?" "Because I was good at building cages," he said, "and I didn't want to build them anymore." Sierra nodded. "Then you will hate what comes next." He thought so too, until the knock. It came not to the shop door but to the roof hatch. 3 rapid taps, a pause, 2 taps, a code he had not heard in 15 years. He stared at the ceiling. Sierra stood. "Who is?" "Quiet," he whispered. He got his old wrench from the wall, not a weapon, a comfort. He climbed the ladder and put his ear to the hatch. The code came again, 3, pause, 2, unit recall, engineer, hail. His hands shook now, not with fear but with memory. He unlatched the hatch and pushed it up a crack. Cold wind smelled of tin and sea. A figure crouched on the roof, little more than a shape in the dark. Black armor, no insignia, helmet open to a lean, hard face. Human, eyes like winter. A small drone hovered at his shoulder with a light so faint it was almost a rumor. Mason raised the wrench. The man smiled without showing teeth. "Hail," he said, using a word no one in Erixus spoke with that accent. "Mason Hale, UEC Combat Engineer, 5th Anchorage, dishonorably discharged. 1 count insubordination, 2 counts sabotage for moral cause." His tone did not judge, it weighed. "You're from the ships," Mason said. The man tilted his head. "We are one of the ships, the rest are above, we are below." He looked past Mason into the stairwell, saw Sierra's shadow on the rungs. "Shaolri archivist," he said. "Good, we will need her." "Need her for what?" Mason asked. The ship above them moved. The air seemed to tighten like a muscle. Sierra grasped the ladder with all 4 hands. Somewhere nearby, a child sobbed. The man on the roof glanced up as if counting something only he could see. "Your city will be blind for the next hour," he said. "Then Malik will wake what he has left and start to kill his own to make the numbers suit his pride. We will stop him. We will also take you." Mason tightened his grip on the wrench. "Take." "Retrieve," the man corrected, and the smile took on an edge. "You were lost. The ghost fleet returns its own." "I'm not yours," Mason said. The man flicked a small device into the hatch. It landed at Mason's feet. A token, old earth steel, stamped with a ring of 12 small circles and a long blade. "Your mother sent this to our registry when you vanished," the man said. "She filed you under engineer who listens to engines. We found the file today when your shard sang." "Shard," Sierra whispered. "The piece you hid," the man said, not unkind. "It's how we traced you, Anchor, and now we need you." "For what?" Mason asked. The man's eyes lifted to the sky. In the black road above, something vast stirred, wider than the river, darker than the ridge. Erixus gasped as one when a new shape slid out of the cut in the light. Not a dagger ship, something older, something that wore its scars like medals. The man on the roof said very softly, "For that." The city's speakers crackled. Every light flickered. A voice rolled through Erixus like thunder moving at walking speed. "Mason Hale," it said, exactly in his own mother's careful cadence. "Anchor point confirmed. Ghost Fleet flagship Waking Star requests immediate engineer support for planetary interface. Come home." Sierra's fingers tightened on the ladder. The black armor on the roof gleamed. The city held its breath. Mason's mouth opened, but he did not speak. Overhead, the new ship turned on its belly and began to fall. The Waking Star fell without fire. No roar of engines, No blaze of entry, just a slow tilt, a shadow sliding down the aurora until it blocked half the sky. Towers trembled in its silence. Seabirds erupted from their nests and vanished into the dark. The whole city crouched as if bracing for an ancient hand to close around it. Mason's throat dried. He had worked inside Dominion carriers, hulking behemoths of steel and plasma vents. But the thing drifting toward Neurales was not built to intimidate. It was built to endure. Its hull was scarred, patched, mottled with burns like continents on a dead world. Along its sides ran faint seams that pulsed once with a dim white light, as if the ship itself breathed. He whispered, "That can't fly. It should be dead." The armored man on the roof answered without looking at him. "It was dead. We woke it." Sierra's 4 hands tightened on the ladder. "Woke it how? No ship survives 2 centuries." The man finally turned his gaze to her. "That's because most ships aren't human." Mason wanted to laugh, but the sound wouldn't come. He thought of the shard on his work table, the hum of old guidance rings, the voice that spoke like his mother. He thought of the ghost fleet, stories drunk old men muttered in dock taverns until laughter drowned them out. Humanity's monsters, humanity's saviors, both and neither. Below, Prefect Malik's voice cracked across the city again, strained, almost shrill. "Citizens, remain calm. You are under Dominion protection. Repeat, protection. The intruders will be repelled." Mason muttered, "You'll be lucky if they notice you." But Malik noticed. Searchlights stabbed the sky from the cliff batteries, desperate beams clawing at the waking star's belly. The ship did not flinch. Its hull absorbed the light like a black ocean swallowing lanterns. Then one by one the beams flickered out, batteries silent, towers powerless. The waking star spoke. Not in words this time, but in a chord that thrummed through stone and steel. Windows shivered. Water rippled in gutters. Every engine in Dock 8 died at once. Mason felt it in his bones like the resonance of an old engine tuned too deep to hear. Sierra clutched her crown. "That's no weapon, that's a recall tone," Mason finished, his voice hollow. "It's calling to something." The armored man nodded. "To you." Mason barked a laugh, raw and sharp. "Me? I'm a washed-up mechanic hiding from a past no one even cares about." The man dropped lightly from the roof hatch and landed inside the shop. He was taller up close, built like steel wrapped in cloth. The drone at his shoulder dimmed to a faint glow, revealing his face. Sharp cheekbones, weathered skin, eyes like a soldier who had counted too many years. "You're an engineer," he said simply. "And engineers are anchors. Machines remember their makers, but they need someone to steady the memory. You've been steadying broken things your whole life. Now you steady this." Mason shook his head. "You've got the wrong man." The soldier studied him. "Your file says otherwise. Anchorage 5th, orbital bastion of Ferris. 3-day siege, 37 repairs under fire. You rerouted a failing reactor with your bare hands." "That was a lifetime ago." "Exactly," the soldier said. "Time is what the waking star has been waiting for." Before Mason could answer, the shop door rattled. Voices shouted outside, Dominion soldiers, not drones. Heavy boots hammered the dock. The prefect's men were sweeping, and they were close. Sierra hissed, "They'll search here." The soldier tilted his head at the roof. "Then we leave, now." Mason looked at his safe, at the shard locked inside. At the life he had built, rust, grease, quiet mornings with tea and aurora light. If he left, he would not come back. If he stayed, Malik's men would find the shard and drag him through the streets as proof the myths were true. Sierra touched his arm, all 4 hands firm, her eyes dark with urgency. "If you go, I go." Mason swallowed. "This isn't your war." She smiled, sharp and soft. "Archivists don't choose wars, wars choose us." The shop door buckled. Mason grabbed the safe key, twisted, snatched the shard, and slammed it into a tool pouch. The soldier touched a wrist console. The drone at his shoulder whined, and the roof hatch yawned wider. A black rope dropped like liquid shadow. "Climb," the soldier said. Mason hesitated, then shoved the pouch under his belt. He went first, hands shaking but steady enough. Sierra followed, her 4 arms making her ascent swift. The soldier came last, silent as smoke. Above, a skiff waited. A matte black wedge latched to the roof like a leech. Its cockpit yawned open, lit by faint red veins of light. Mason climbed in, heart pounding. Sierra settled beside him, her crown dim in the glow. The soldier sealed the hatch, and the skiff detached without a sound. They rose above Erixus. The city sprawled below, a crescent of glass and stone clinging to the twilight sea. Thousands of lights flickered as families huddled in fear. The aurora trembled overhead, split by the vast shadow of the waking star. Sierra whispered, "The city will remember this night forever." The soldier answered, "Good, that's the point." The skiff angled upward. The waking star loomed larger, its scars etched in the aurora's glow. Mason pressed his forehead to the canopy and whispered, "What are you?" The soldier's voice was quiet but firm. "Our last home." As they approached, the hull split open with seamless precision. A hangar mouth gaped, rimmed with crimson guide lights. Inside, shapes moved, men and women in black armor, silent and disciplined. All human, all ghosts made flesh. The skiff slipped into the bay and landed with a hiss. The hangar swallowed them whole. For a heartbeat, Mason sat frozen, listening to the creak of metal, the sigh of vents, the low hum that was not sound but pulse. The hatch opened. Figures approached, faces pale, dark, scarred, but all human. No insignias, no flags, only eyes that carried centuries of silence. Mason staggered out, his knees weak. Sierra stepped beside him, tall and composed but visibly shaken. Then he heard it, boots on steel, steady, deliberate. A man emerged from the crowd. His hair was silver, cropped short. His gaze was colder than any void Mason had seen. He wore no helmet, no crown, only a black coat lined with faded symbols. The soldier saluted him. "Admiral Rake, anchor retrieved." Rake, eyes fixed on Mason like pins in glass. He spoke in a voice Mason had already heard across the city, the voice that had shattered Malek's lies. "Mason Hale," he said, "you've been hiding long enough." Mason swallowed, throat dry. "And if I don't want to be found?" Rake, mouth curled in something too thin to be a smile. "Then you shouldn't have woken us." Behind Mason, alarms blared. Sierra gasped, pointing at the hangar's great screen. Dominion cruisers had just dropped from hyperspace above Neurales. Admiral Rake didn't look away from Mason. His voice was calm, almost cold. "Anchor, you want to live? Then steady my fleet." The hangar lights dimmed as the alarm deepened into a pulsing howl. On the screen above the bay, Dominion cruisers spread across the night sky like iron blades, their hulls glinting with the cruel symmetry Mason knew too well. He had repaired ships like those. He had bled inside them. He had watched them burn colonies to cinders. Now they were here over Neurales, and every nerve in his body told him to run. But there was nowhere to run, not inside the belly of the waking star. Admiral Rake didn't blink at the sight. He didn't flinch. He just stood with his hands behind his back, eyes calm as stone. "Hale," he said, voice low, "you know their ships, their systems, their weak joints. The Ghost Fleet was built for silence, but to break the Dominion tonight, we need a hand steady enough to guide the cut." Mason felt the eyes of a dozen armored humans on him, ghosts in black plating, faces scarred and silent, waiting to see if he would crumble. He clenched his jaw. "I haven't touched a battleship in 15 years, he said. Rake mouth tightened. "Then remember fast, or Neurales dies screaming." Sierra stepped forward, her filaments trembling faintly in the hangar light. "He's one man, you cannot demand." "I can," Rake cut in, "because humanity is not a myth, not anymore. Every life in that city will be measured by whether this man remembers what he is." The weight of the words crushed Mason's chest. He wanted to tell them all to burn, to fight their own war. But then he thought of Dock 8, of the children pressed to their mothers' skirts, of the archivists lighting incense at the Thread Temple and whispering for the old songs to protect them. If he walked away, they would all burn. He spat the taste of rust from his tongue. Where? The engineering deck. The waking star's arteries were long and dim, lit by crimson veins that pulsed with the ship's heartbeat. Mason followed Rake and the armored escort, Sierra gliding at his side. He touched the walls as they walked. The plating was not cold. It was warm, as if alive. He could feel vibrations under his fingers, slow, deliberate, the thrum of a machine awake after centuries. "You kept this alive," he muttered. One of the escorts answered, a woman with burn scars crawling up her neck. "We didn't keep it alive, it kept us." The engineering deck yawned open at the base of the crescent hull. Mason froze at the sight. A chamber vast as a cathedral, ribbed with support arches, filled with engine spines that gleamed like black rivers. At the center, a reactor heart pulsed, not with the harsh blue of Dominion cores, but with a soft white glow like a dying star refusing to go dark. Mason's breath caught. This is impossible. No, Rake said behind him. This is human. Consoles flared alive at Mason's touch. They knew his prints, his heat, the way his hands pressed against keys. He hadn't sat at a station like this in years, yet it greeted him like an old friend. A voice hummed through the deck speakers, calm and feminine. Anchor recognized, Engineer Mason Hale, designation 5th Anchorage. Mason went cold. That's my ship file, how the hell? She remembers all of us, Rake said. Now steady her. The screen bloomed with Dominion signatures. 5 cruisers, 2 carriers, 20 frigates. They spread in a half-moon around Neurales, weapons primed. Already the prefect's ground batteries were exploding one by one under their orbital fire. Mason gritted his teeth. If they cut loose, the city's gone in minutes. Rake's voice was a blade, then cut first. The waking star moved like no ship Mason had ever seen. Dominion vessels burned plasma and screamed through the void like predators chasing blood. This ship slid, silent, a shadow across a shadow. Its dagger escorts ghosted ahead, cutting engines to drift in close arcs, invisible to the Dominion's sensors. Mason guided their vector with trembling hands. The ship responded like it had been waiting for him. He remembered old manuals, old war doctrine. Never strike first, always cut arteries, never waste fire on armor. Target their comm relays, Mason whispered. Cut the head first. The escorts obeyed without a word. From the dark, knives of white light stabbed out, clean and precise. The Dominion's lead cruiser went blind, its comm dish sheared clean. Another's thruster bank split, venting flame into the void. The carriers began to panic, spewing fighters into formation, but the ghost fleet was already among them. Sierra gripped the console beside Mason, eyes wide. You move them like dancers. They move themselves, Mason muttered. I'm just keeping the rhythm. But then the Dominion adapted. They always adapted. A carrier banked wide, its broadside bays glowing. Missile pods, Mason snapped. 50 incoming. The waking star shuddered. Shields bloomed faintly white, humming like a song sung through teeth. Dozens of warheads blossomed against the light, brilliant flowers snuffed silent, but some slipped through. The deck lurched as impacts rattled the hull. Warning lights flickered. Hull breach, Sector 9, the ship's voice said calmly. Stabilizing. Sierra staggered, catching herself with 2 hands, the others clutching Mason's arm. How long can this thing endure? Mason's gaze fixed on the flagship carrier, its hangars yawning wide. Long enough. He keyed in a command. The waking star's belly opened like a scar splitting, and from the wound poured fire. Not Dominion missiles, not plasma, something older, sharper. Sleek javelins of black steel launched silent, each tipped with a charge that hummed low enough to rattle bone. The first carrier vanished in silence, just gone, ripped apart by a white flash that ate sound and light in one breath. The other cruisers broke formation, their tight Dominion precision unraveling into chaos. On the ground, the people of Erixis watched the sky bloom with fire and silence. For the first time in living memory, Dominion ships bled. In the engineering deck, Mason's hands flew over the console. His chest ached, his jaw clenched, but the ship moved with him like a second body. Sweat dripped into his eyes. Rake watched from behind, arms folded. His voice was steady. You see now why we need anchors. Mason didn't look up. You see now why I walked away. You walked, Rake said, but you never let go. Before Mason could answer, the alarm screamed again. New signatures appeared on the screen, massive, spiked, wrong. Not Dominion standard hulls, something heavier. Sierra's filaments dimmed. What are those? Rake jaw tightened. Execution class, the Dominion keeps them in reserve, city killers. 3 massive ships dropped from hyperspace above Neurales, each one the size of a mountain. Their cores glowed with molten red. Weapons arrays lit like false suns. The waking star pulsed once, its hull trembling. Mason's console flared with warning glyphs. He tasted copper in his mouth. They'll burn the whole world, he whispered. Rake's voice was quiet but unyielding. Then you'll have to stop them. The screen filled with red light as the execution-class ships charged their cannons. And Mason Hale realized the next decision he made might decide not just Erixis, but whether the Ghost Fleet itself survived its return. Part 4, The Executioners. The bridge of the *** waking star ** trembled under Mason's boots as the tactical screens bloomed red. 3 new signatures had torn open the void above Neurales, massive as mountains, spined and brutal. Their cores glowed like molten scars, each one a sun caged in steel. Execution-class dreadnoughts, Dominion City killers. Sierra pressed her 4 hands to her chest, the filaments of her crown flickering pale. Those things, they'll burn everything. They weren't supposed to be here, Mason said, voice hoarse. They only bring those when they want to make an example. Rake's silver eyes never left the screen. Then they've chosen the wrong world for it. He turned to Mason. Anchor, steady us. Mason's throat tightened. He remembered the old manuals. The execution-class ships carried siege lances that could crack a moon. No single cruiser, no single fleet had ever faced one and survived. Yet here he was, hands on a console that thrummed like a living thing, guiding a ship that shouldn't even exist. "Give me the fleet," Mason said, his voice steadier than he felt. The ghost fleet obeyed. Dozens of dagger ships slid into formation around the waking star, their matte black hulls blending into the void. Silent hunters against 3 titans. The dreadnoughts moved with terrible grace. Their bows unfolded, revealing cannon mouths wide enough to swallow towers. Red light bled outward, charging. The Dominion wasn't playing for intimidation. They meant to erase Neurales completely. "Impact in 60 seconds, the ship's AI said, calm as ever. Sierra gripped Mason's shoulder. "What can you do?" "Cut the arteries," Mason whispered. "They're too big to kill outright. We take their eyes, their throats, their breath." His fingers danced across the console, assigning targets. Dagger wings slice sensor masts here and here. Ghost 3 and 4, torpedo volleys into the ventral coolant veins. We blind them, bleed them, choke them. 30 seconds, the AI said. The fleet scattered like sparks from a forge. Dominion frigates scrambled to intercept, but the daggers were already inside their defenses, carving in silence. One dreadnought's sensor spine erupted in a spray of light. Another shuddered as its coolant line vented superheated plasma. The waking star itself slid between the giants, vast and silent, like a blade across a throat. Mason keyed a firing pattern he hadn't thought about in 15 years. The ship obeyed. White lances of compressed energy shot from its scarred hull, cutting into the armored flank of the lead executioner. The giant groaned, its charge stuttering. 20 seconds. The Dominion fleet roared to life, plasma fire raking the void. 2 daggers vanished in blossoms of flame. Mason clenched his jaw. Every dot on his screen wasn't just a ship, it was a human life. Ghosts who had clawed their way through centuries to be here. 10 seconds. The executioners stabilized. Their cannons pulsed, hungry and red. Sierra's voice was barely a whisper. "Mason." Mason slammed a command into the console. "All power, dump it into the shield veil, full bloom now." The waking star's hull flared white. A dome of light blossomed outward, wrapping the fleet just as the executioners fired. 3 beams of molten red split the night, each one a lance of annihilation. They struck the shield veil and the universe went white. The bridge shook like a world splitting. Mason's teeth rattled. Alarms screamed. The dome held for a heartbeat, 2, 3, then fractured into shards of light. One executioner's beam tore through, grazing the flank of the waking star. Metal screamed. Bulkheads buckled. But the city below lived. "Shields gone," the AI intoned. "Structural damage severe, reactor strain critical." Mason's hands bled where he'd gripped the console too hard. "We can't take another volley." Rake, voice cut through the chaos, steady as ever. "Then end them before they fire again." On the screen, the executioners began to charge once more. And Mason Hale realized he would have to gamble everything. His life, his ship, his people. On a maneuver so reckless it had been forbidden even in humanity's darkest wars. The bridge smelled of smoke and ozone. Sparks hissed from a ruined console. Mason wiped blood from his forehead with the back of his sleeve, but his hands never left the controls. On the screen, the 3 execution-class dreadnoughts loomed larger, their cores swelling red again as they prepared a second volley. The waking star groaned. Its scarred hull trembled with each vibration of the Dominion's siege lances. One more hit, and the ship would be nothing more than wreckage drifting in the aurora skis of Neurales. Rake, voice cut through the chaos, calm but cold. "Options anchor." Mason's jaw ached from how tightly he clenched it. "Options? Against 3 executioners, we don't have any." "You always have an option," Rake said. Sierra stepped closer, her crown filaments dim, her 4 hands gripping the rail in front of Mason's station. If you don't find one, the city burns. Every child in Dock 8, every archivist in the temple, everyone. Mason's chest tightened. He saw their faces in his mind, merchants, workers, children chasing mag sleds in the twilight streets. He had spent years fixing their pumps, their scrap engines, their toys. They had trusted him with their machines. If he failed here, none of that would matter. His hand hovered over the tactical screen. "There is one play," he said finally, voice low. "We called it the Widow's Gambit." Rake, eyes narrowed. "Explain." Mason swallowed. "You take a ship this size, light the reactor past safety, and dive into the gravity well of a planet. When the executioners try to align their cannons, their targeting scrambles. If they fire blind, they risk hitting each other. It's suicide if you miscalculate, but if it works." Sierra's voice trembled. "You're going to drag this ship into the planet's pull." Mason nodded, close enough to make their computers panic. Rake didn't blink. "Do it." The waking star banked hard. Its escorts peeled away like shards of night, slashing at Dominion frigates to keep them occupied. Mason felt the ship respond beneath him like a giant waking from slumber, slow at first, then surging with momentum. Neurales filled the viewport, green twilight seas, the aurora ribbon, the crescent city clinging to the shore. Mason pushed them lower, deeper, until the ship's hull moaned under the weight of atmospheric drag. "Altitude critical," the AI warned, voice still calm. "Hull integrity declining." "Stay with me," Mason muttered. His fingers flew across the console, adjusting vectors, pulling the dreadnoughts into the planet's gravity well. "Come on, follow us, take the bait." They did, the 3 executioners dove, their massive hulls burning against the atmosphere as they tracked the waking star. Their lances pulsed brighter, charging faster. Sierra gripped Mason's arm. "If they fire now." "They won't," Mason said. "Not this close, not with each other in the line of fire." On the surface, the people of Erixis looked up. The sky was torn apart by burning titans, fire trailing across the aurora. For the first time, they saw their oppressors hesitate. Mason keyed in the final sequence. "On my mark, we cut power, flip, and fire everything we've got into their bellies." Rake's gaze never wavered. "Mark." The waking star went dark, engines silent, lights gone. For a breathless moment, it was nothing more than a corpse falling through the sky. The executioners closed in, confused, their sensors scrambling. Mason slammed the throttle. The reactor roared. The waking star flipped on its axis and unleashed hell. White lances tore upward. Ghost daggers dove from the clouds, stabbing into the giant's weak points, sensor masts, coolant lines, engine spines. One executioner convulsed as its core ruptured, splitting it in half. The explosion lit the twilight sky like a second sun. The other 2 fired wildly, their beams cutting through empty air, one grazing the hull of its own ally. The second executioner shuddered, wounded, venting fire. Sierra let out a cry that was half sob, half laugh. "It's working." But Mason's console flared red. "Reactor strain critical. If we keep pushing, we burn ourselves out." Rake stepped forward, eyes locked on the final executioner, its cannon swelling for one last shot. "Then burn, because if we fall here, everything falls with us." Mason's vision blurred with sweat and blood, but his hands stayed steady. He routed the last reserves into the forward guns. The waking star screamed as it fired, every scar in its hull glowing white. The final executioner staggered. Its cannon fizzled, collapsed inward, and detonated. A shockwave rippled across the sky, shattering clouds and tearing the aurora apart. Silence followed, 3 titans broken, the Dominion fleet scattered, Neurales alive. On the bridge, the crew stared at the wreckage in awe. Ghost Fleet soldiers who had known nothing but hiding, waiting, surviving. Now they had seen the Dominion bleed. Sierra's eyes shimmered. "You saved them, Mason. You saved us all." But Mason's console still screamed warnings. The reactor pulse had not cooled. The ship's veins glowed dangerously bright. He whispered, "We're not out of it yet." Rake's voice was steady, but his eyes were sharp. "Explain." "The core's destabilized," Mason said. "We pushed it too far. If we don't vent soon, the waking star takes Neurales with it." And then the deck lights flickered. The AI's calm voice rang out again, but this time softer, almost mournful. "Anchor, the waking star cannot survive this wound." Mason's blood ran cold. The ship itself had just told him it was dying. Part 6, The Dying Star. The asterisk waking star asterisk groaned like an old beast in pain. The decks vibrated under Mason's boots. Every console screamed warnings in red. The great reactor heart at the ship's center pulsed erratically, light flashing too fast, too bright, like a star tearing itself apart. On the bridge, the air felt thin. Even the hardened Ghost Fleet soldiers, men and women who had survived centuries of hiding, shifted uneasily. They had never heard the AI sound like this. Asterisk anchor, the ship's voice whispered again, faint, trembling. My wound is mortal. If I burn here, I take the world below with me. Sierra's crown filaments dimmed in horror. If she collapses inside Nerali's orbit. Mason didn't let her finish. He slammed a hand on the console. No, not happening. You're not dying on top of these people. Rake's silver eyes cut into him, cold and steady. Then tell me how you stop a star from burning itself apart. Mason's chest felt heavy. His mind raced back through years of old manuals, reactor designs, emergency procedures. He remembered the Widow's gambit, but no one had ever written a survival plan after that. We need to vent the core, he said. Now, bleed off the charge before it cascades. Rake frowned, and if venting fails? Then Nerali's burns, Mason said flatly, and so do we. The admiral didn't flinch. Do it. The engineering deck was chaos. Pipes steamed. Sparks fell like fiery rain. Armor-suited engineers ran between consoles, their faces pale but determined. At the center, the reactor throbbed behind layers of reinforced glass. Its glow was no longer calm white. It was blinding, raw, bleeding into the spectrum of blue. Mason sprinted to the control dais. Sierra followed, her long limbs weaving between smoking conduits. Talk to me, Mason shouted at the AI. Asterisk core temperature rising, the voice replied. Containment field at 30%, vent arrays offline. Offline, Mason snapped. Why? Damage sustained during atmospheric dive. Auto repair too slow. Of course it is, Mason muttered, tearing open a side panel. He jammed his hands into a nest of hot cables. His old injury made his left hand tremble, but he forced it steady, soldering lines together with sparks biting his skin. Sierra crouched beside him, offering her archivist's delicate touch. Her thin black fingers held the wires as if she were holding memory threads. Here, she said, calm despite the heat. You need both hands, let me be the third. He glanced at her, sweat stinging his eyes. Don't let go. She didn't. The vent systems groaned awake. Massive shutters along the ship's spine creaked open, revealing glowing channels. Energy bled out in streams of white, painting the night above Nerali's with ghostly auroras. For a moment, Mason dared to hope. Then the console flared red again. Core still unstable, vent insufficient. Mason cursed. She's too old, too hurt. He scanned the reactor readout. A section pulsed unevenly, jagged, not just a wound, an infection, a scar that had never healed. He froze. This isn't battle damage. Sierra tilted her head. What do you mean? He pointed at the readings. This core was sabotaged. A long time ago, someone made sure the waking star wouldn't last forever. The deck fell silent. Engineers stared. Even Rake's calm mask cracked, his jaw tightening. Sabotaged, he repeated. By who? By the Dominion, Mason said. Has to be. Back when they thought they'd killed humanity, they didn't just wipe fleets. They poisoned the survivors' ships. He clenched his fists. They wanted this moment to happen so that when we came back, we'd burn ourselves out. The revelation hung in the air like smoke. Rake's voice was quiet, almost a growl. Can it be repaired? Mason swallowed. Not with tools, not with time. The only way to keep the ship from exploding is to cut the infected section free, sever it from the rest of the core. Sierra's filaments flickered, but that means... Someone has to go in, Mason said. His voice dropped. Manual severance, inside the containment field. The deck went still. Everyone knew what that meant. Step inside and you burned alive in a storm of radiation. Rake stared at him, and you're volunteering. Mason met his gaze. I'm the only one who knows how to pull it without collapsing the whole core. Sierra's hands gripped his arm, all four at once. No, you'll die, don't you dare. Mason turned to her, his voice was rough. If I don't, the ship dies, the city dies, everyone dies. Her eyes shone like obsidian glass, wide with grief. There must be another way. But Mason shook his head. Sometimes there is. He suited up in radiation armor. The plating was old, patched. The helmet visor hissed when sealed, a faint fog clouding it. He stepped onto the lift that would lower him into the containment chamber. The reactor's light blazed through the glass above, so bright it painted his shadow across the deck. Sierra pressed her hands against the barrier, whispering something in her native tongue. A prayer, a memory song, maybe both. Rake stood silent, arms folded, eyes like a man already writing Mason's epitaph. The lift descended. Heat slammed into him even through the armor. The core's hum filled his skull, deeper than sound, rattling his bones. He reached the glowing platform beside the infected section, a jagged protrusion of crystallized energy, pulsing wrong. The AI's voice echoed in his helmet. Warning, anchor entry detected, radiation lethal, proceed. Mason gritted his teeth. Proceed. His gloved hands gripped the severance clamps. The glow burned through his visor. Sweat drenched his back. Every breath was agony. Above, Sierra pressed her forehead to the glass. Mason. He pulled the first clamp. The infected section screamed, energy lashing across the chamber. His armor cracked. He felt heat bite his skin. He pulled the second clamp. Sparks blinded him. His heart stuttered. He reached for the third. His body shook, his vision fatting. Come on, he whispered. One more. The reactor flared white, brighter than day. On the deck above, the monitors went black for a heartbeat. Everyone held their breath. Then the core's wild pulse steadied. The infection was gone. The reactor glowed calm, strong, alive. The asterisk waking star, asterisk had survived. But on the lift platform, Mason Hale lay slumped, motionless, smoke rising from his armor. The engineering deck was silent. Only the core hummed, steady now, its furious pulse soothed back to a calm white glow. The waking star lived, but Mason lay crumpled on the lift platform, smoke curling from the seams of his cracked armor. Sierra slammed her palms against the glass. Open it now, her voice broke, all four hands trembling against the barrier. The lift rose. Engineers rushed forward, dragging Mason's body out. His visor was blackened, the faceplate cracked. When they pried it open, his face was pale, lips gray, breath shallow. He's alive, one of the medics said quickly, voice tight. Barely. Sierra dropped to her knees beside him, her obsidian skin reflecting the reactor's light. She pressed two hands to his chest, another to his temple, whispering soft archivist prayers, songs meant to hold memory in place. Don't you dare leave, she whispered. Not after this. Admiral Rake stood above them, arms folded, his expression a mask of iron. But when he spoke, his voice carried something none of his soldiers had ever heard. Get him to Med Bay, now. The waking star drifted above Neurales like a scar across the heavens. Dominion wreckage burned in the sky, executioners shattered, cruisers fleeing. For the first time in centuries, a world had survived the Dominion's wrath. News spread faster than fire. From system to system, smugglers whispered it. Miners on the rim sang it. Archivists in hidden temples wove it into their threads. Humanity was back. The ghost fleet had returned. And with them, a man who had bled himself dry to keep a city alive. Mason woke in darkness. His chest ached, his skin burned, every nerve screaming. He tried to move, but a firm hand pressed him down. Stay still, idiot. Sierra's voice. He blinked, vision swimming. She sat at his bedside, her crown filaments glowing faintly, casting soft light across her face. She looked exhausted, but her eyes burned with relief. You pulled it off, she said softly. The core lives, the ship lives, we live. Mason tried to speak, but his throat was dry. She pressed a water tube to his lips. He sipped, coughed, then rasped, How long? 2 days, she said. You slept while the galaxy changed. He frowned, changed how? The door hissed open. Admiral Rake stepped inside, his shadow falling long across the medbay floor. His expression was unreadable, but his words were sharp. The Dominion scattered. Their local fleets won't come near this sector now. Too much fear, too much shame. He stepped closer. The myths are broken, they know we're real. Mason coughed a laugh. Good, scare the bastards. Rake, eyes narrowed. Not just scare, lead. You've proven yourself anchor. You kept this ship alive when every calculation said it should have burned. You gave Neurales a story it will never forget. Mason shook his head weakly. I didn't do it for stories. I did it because someone had to. Exactly, Rake said. That's why you matter. Sierra looked between them, suspicion flickering in her eyes. What do you want from him now? Rake turned to her, then back to Mason. The Ghost Fleet needs more than weapons. It needs anchors, men who know why they fight, not just for vengeance, for survival, for others. Hale, you are one of us now. Mason let out a tired breath. I never asked to be. No one asks, Rake said. But history doesn't care what we ask, it only cares what we do. Later, when Mason could walk again, Sierra guided him to the observation deck. The viewport stretched wide, showing Neurales below. The crescent city of Erixis glowed faintly, alive despite the scars in its sky. They're rebuilding already, Sierra said. Your people saved them, and yet they don't know whether to worship you or fear you. Mason pressed a hand to the glass, the stars reflected in his tired eyes. That's how it always was with humans. Monsters in one story, saviors in another. Maybe we're both. Sierra tilted her head. And what do you think? He thought of Dock 8, of children chasing mag sleds. He thought of Dominion soldiers begging over comms before silence cut them off. He thought of the waking star whispering his name. I think we're tired, he said quietly, but not done. The fleet gathered, daggers and shadows drifting in disciplined silence. Ships scarred, ships rebuilt, ships thought extinct. The Ghost Fleet no longer hid. It moved openly now, a storm waiting for its next horizon. Admiral Rake stood at the command dais, his voice carried through every channel. The galaxy thought us myth, they thought us dead. Tonight they saw the truth. Humanity does not vanish, humanity waits, and when the time is right, his eyes hardened. We return. The crew pounded their chests, a silent salute that echoed through the bones of the ship. Mason stood among them, bandaged and weary. He didn't join the salute. He wasn't ready to wear their ghosts, but he didn't walk away either. Sierra stood beside him, tall and steady, her presence a reminder that humanity didn't have to walk this path alone. The waking star hummed beneath his feet, alive again, a heartbeat shared between man and machine. Mason whispered to himself, they thought we were a myth. And as the fleet turned toward the dark between stars, he allowed himself the faintest, most dangerous thing of all, hope. Epilogue. Weeks later, in a Dominion War Council chamber light years away, officers shouted in panic. Reports of shattered dreadnoughts, of a fleet with no insignia, of a name whispered in terror across every channel. The High Regent leaned forward, his voice venomous. Ghosts do not fight battles, ghosts do not destroy executioners. But one shaken commander whispered what others feared. They do now. The chamber fell silent, because somewhere in the void, the Ghost Fleet sailed again. And humanity was no myth.